Hello there, Internet. Welcome to the very first episode of Let's Draw Video Games. My name is Kotor. I'm going to be your host and cartoonist for today. The aim behind this series is basically to give me something to do when BretonStripes is very busy and can't come to the microphone right away. What I'm going to be doing just for fun is I'm going to be doing some drawing, and I'm going to be talking you through my process, and I'm going to be talking in general about things that I think are interesting. Today we're going to be doing some Pokemon, because if you haven't seen, there have been those fantastic new old Pokemon that have been discovered. An old ROM from the early beta days of Pokemon Gold and Silver has been released onto the internet, and with it has come a bunch of new old Pokemon designs that were removed from the Gold and Silver games before the games were actually published. So what I'm going to be doing is drawing a couple of those, but I'm starting today instead just by drawing Pikachu. And the reason for that is, to be honest, I got all the way out to this lovely park to the side of a beautiful lake and I forgot my pencil, so I couldn't do any sketching. Normally what I'll do is I will sketch a piece first, and then I will ink over the top, and then I will erase the pencil lines, and then I will potentially add some colour depending on what the picture is. So in order to warm up and make sure that I could actually do this, I figured I'd start by just drawing Pikachu, because I know Pikachu, because I have been drawing Pikachu for 25 plus years by this point, so I know what I'm doing. This is also, I feel, an excellent opportunity to talk about my reaction to the news that we're going to be getting some Pokemon games on the Switch in the form of Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. I am so excited for these games. Now, just between you and me, I've not actually purchased a Switch yet. Don't tell Lucas Thomas, the editor of Nintendo Force magazine, because he probably expects me to have had one by now, because I do comics for the magazine. But it's a lot of money, and we're a small family with limited income, and so I've not actually gotten around to purchasing one at this point. Especially because BretonStripes was more interested in PlayStation 4 when we did buy a console recently, rather than the Nintendo one, just because we got burned by the Wii U to a certain degree. We bought it expecting it to have all of these amazing games, and then nothing actually got released for it, or at least nothing that really caught our attention. We played a lot of Mario Kart, but not much else. So Pikachu, Let's Go Pikachu, and Let's Go Eevee, I think, are the first games that I've seen for the device that I've really thought, we need those in our lives. And I think a part of the reason is because it seems a lot more kid-friendly than, say, Zelda or even Mario Odyssey. Both of these games, I imagine, our daughter would approve of, because she is little and small and wants something that's a little bit more her level, and I think a game where you just have Pikachu following you around, that's more her thing. But also, I guess to a certain extent, the reason for me liking the look of these games more is I'm kind of burned out on the standard Pokemon games. I know that seems almost like heresy to admit, but I've played a lot of the Pokemon RPG, and back when they re-released Pokemon Blue and Pokemon Red on the Nintendo eShop for the 3DS, I played a lot of them again, and I played them going to social events with friends at the arcade that I go to regularly, and everybody was playing it, and we were all trading in person and having a wonderful time, and I came away from that really feeling like this is the Pokemon experience that I've enjoyed the most of any of the games recently. So what's the point in getting the new ones? And because family life is busy, and because I don't always have necessarily a lot of time to play games, I allowed Sun and Moon and their sequels to just pass me by. And I thought for a while, perhaps I'm just kind of done with the Pokemon series. But the idea of a Pokemon game that is instead simplified. Let's Go Pikachu looks like a very simple game compared to some of the more complicated new elements that have been introduced in more recent ones like Sun and Moon. It seems like they've distilled the formula down to make it this kind of baby's first Pokemon game, the idea of a role-playing game that does away with a lot of the more complicated stuff. And that's great, because I hate a lot of the complicated stuff. I hate chaining for EVs or IVs or whatever and trying to work out the stats of my Pokemon. I don't want to do that. I don't even want to grind, really. I just want to go out and play Pokemon and catch stuff. So the idea of just throwing a pretend Pokeball, Pokemon Go style, feels like it's the perfect fit for me. Like, I really enjoyed Pokemon Go. I probably would have kept playing it for longer had it not just completely destroyed the battery life on my phone. I think that was the thing more than anything else that killed it for me, was I couldn't continue to not have a phone, basically, because I needed a devoted Pokemon Go device. And so yeah, personally I am very excited at the idea of having a Pokemon Go game where you don't have to kind of walk around outside. You can sit there at home, or you can take it with you if you want, but you're not required to constantly put forth effort and, crucially, constantly burn through power bars in order to keep your phone charged up in order to play the games. At the same time, I'd love an opportunity to get back into Pokemon Go, so because I do genuinely think, like that summer, that 2016 summer, when the game was brand new and everybody was playing it, and we got outside and spent more time outside, there goes a nice army man in the background, it was just the most wonderful summer, and I'd love to do that again, but yeah, I can't justify burning through my battery. Anyway, so that was Pikachu. I'm now going to draw another of the Pokemon. This one is going to be one of the brand new old ones from the Gold and Silver demo, in honour of Lucas Thomas, the editor of Nintendo Force, posting a picture of it on Twitter. I thought I would draw the beta version. Beta? I say beta. I think I do. The beta version of Noctowl. So there's Noctowl's beta version, presumably called Hoo, if I have read online correctly, but then that might be a bad translation and that might be someone's interpretation of it and someone else might have a different idea. So this is actually, I'm having a bit of a hard time with this because what I don't have is a pencil, and normally I would sketch things out in advance. For example, I think that crest just went a little bit wonky. So bear with me, this isn't going to look 100%, but you know what, half the fun of drawing isn't necessarily getting everything perfect, it's about experimenting and messing around and doing things from your own perspective and kind of capturing your own view on the world. So if things don't entirely go correctly, I'm not that upset, I just want to make sure that I do my best, and so that kind of takes a little bit of concentration, a little bit of practice. I'm using a fine liner here that Faber-Castell brand. I really like them because they've got nice thick dark ink, which I find a lot of fine liners don't. I've also been getting really into dip nibs recently, kind of like calligraphy nibs but for drawing. The only problem with those is a fly on my drawing board. The only problem with those is they're a real hassle to clean and a real hassle to kind of constantly be dipping in for the ink. So for going outside and doing some drawing as I'm doing in this video, I just wanted something that would be nice and convenient for me. The problem with using my phone for a reference on this is I have to keep constantly tapping it to make sure that it doesn't disappear on me. I think a lot of the designs for the beta Pokemon, I actually... Is it wrong to say that I like them more than the ones that made it into the final game? It's not. That's certainly not the case. I think there are a lot of really interesting, dynamic, unique designs in the Gold and Silver era Pokemon that certainly I think were lacking from the old one, like kind of the beta ones. But what I do like about these is I like their simplicity to a certain extent. I like that they almost feel like an extension of the red and blue Pokemon, more so than the Gold and Silver ones. I feel like the Gold and Silver ones have their own unique flavour, and I imagine that the team at Game Freak probably worked very hard to create that flavour and to use the advancements in technology and to also kind of their own increased skill to be able to design creatures that were a little bit more complex and had a little bit more individual personality. But some of these ones that are just blobs or that have kind of eyes with mouths or round bodies, I kind of like that simplicity. It feels more like the old school, the games that I first got into. I feel like another part of the reason why more recent Pokemon games haven't entirely grabbed me is the Pokemon designs don't quite, and I know this is a common complaint and that it's so common in fact that a lot of people get annoyed when people say it, but I like the simplicity of the old designs and I've not quite got that same emotional connection to the new ones. It doesn't mean that I don't like some of the new Pokemon. I really do like some of them, and I think they're really interesting and engaging, but there's that nostalgic appeal, I think, to looking at some of these beta Pokemon where they really remind me of the Pokemon that first introduced me to the series way back when. And maybe that's a big part of my issue. Maybe I've come to a point now where nostalgia is wearing a bit thin for the mainline Pokemon games. And perhaps that's why Let's Go... I keep wanting to call it Hey You Pikachu, but that's a very different game for a very different console. Why Let's Go Pikachu appeals to me so much. I I like the idea of going back to visit Kanto again and playing through all of that stuff, even if it does look very different to kind of that image that I have in my head of what the games look like. I also enjoyed that these sprites, at least the ones that I was looking at, they didn't have the colorized versions yet when I downloaded this little image of all of them. And I like them in black and white because, again, it's that retro feel. It's that nostalgic, this is what they look like when I was a kid kind of vibe. There is something to that. I think there's something just kind of... So there's this theory in drawing, which is talked about a lot in Scott McCloud's book, Understanding Comics, where he talks about how the simpler an image is, the more relatable it is. So if you, for example, take the Mona Lisa, it's a beautiful, beautiful piece of artwork. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's very, very intricately made. It's very, very, a lot of detail in it, and it is the Mona Lisa. And scholars have spent centuries trying to figure out who that person was and what her life was like and why Da Vinci painted her and all of this. But anybody else looking at the painting won't look at that and say, oh, that's me. They look at it and say, that's the Mona Lisa. Whereas if you take, say, a stick figure, just a very simple stick figure with absolutely no extra details whatsoever, most people on the planet, if they look at that, will see themselves in it. They will say, oh, that stick figure in this instance can represent me. And that's part of the reason why I like to draw in such a simple manner, is because I like my art to be very relatable. I want everybody to be able to see themselves in it. I want people to be able to project their own emotions into it, which I think is something that's difficult to do if a picture is more detailed, more complex. I went through a phase where I was drawing more like a Disney kind of illustrator. I really wanted to emulate that style for a while, and I got really into it. And then I went and drew some comics in that style, and not only did it take longer, which admittedly is a problem because I don't always have a lot of time to draw, but the bigger issue that I had with it was I was looking at these pictures and I was like, well, you can only read that emotion one way. That's a happy emotion, that's a sad emotion. Whereas if you just draw 2 dots for eyes and a line for a mouth, it can be whatever you want it to be. And that's part of the reason why I draw the way I do, and it's part of the reason I think why I react so strongly to a lot of these early Pokemon designs. So I'm actually fairly pleased with how this has turned out. There's my Beta Noctowl, my hoot-hoot, if you want. That sounds weird. I think I'll just call it Beta Noctowl from now on. It's not quite perfect, but it's alright. It could be worse. I feel like I've done a fairly good job, especially, as I say, I'm drawing this without any pencil lines to be able to kind of essentially plot out what I'm doing in advance. And that's fair enough, actually, because that's quite similar to the way that these Pokemon designs were originally kind of invented. We did a video a little while ago about the creation of Pikachu and the creator of Pikachu, and it was very interesting to learn that the artists who were designing these Pokemon for the first time, certainly for Red and Blue, or Red and Green as it was in America, not in America, sorry, in Japan, they wouldn't sketch anything out beforehand. They wouldn't draw on paper. They would just go straight into drawing in the pixel editor that they were using within the game. So straight into the computer, and they were trying to play around with the pixels. And I think that makes sense, because if you design something, this, by the way, is Baby Tangler. I do not know its name. I just think it's absolutely amazing, so I'm going to draw that. But yeah, if you were to draw out a design first and then try and figure out how to put it into a computer, bearing in mind that you're working with a very small sprite tile with a very limited amount of pixels that you can use in that's going to be a really challenging thing to do. You're not going to have the space that you need necessarily to put in a more complicated design. And I think that's reflected in the design for a lot of the original Pokemon, is that their designs were very, very simple because they genuinely didn't have the wherewithal to do anything else. They had to keep them as simple as possible, and especially because they were putting them straight into the computer. It also explains why, if you look at, say, the sprites for the original Red and Green, they are beautiful in their own special way. Like, I absolutely love them. I'm particularly a fan of Venusaur, who looks like it's been flattened. So when we did that video on the creation of Pikachu, I had to include flat Venusaur and a bunch of the other ones, the sprites from the original Red and Green games that just look a little bit too derpy for words. They're just fantastic. BretonStripes is often perplexed by how much I love kind of weird, kooky looking artwork, especially when it's like that, when it's really earnest, when it's genuinely the best that someone can do, and they've put their whole heart and soul into it. Like, I love that more than a polished professional piece that's made by somebody who doesn't care. It's so much better when somebody really genuinely tries their best, and even if they've not got it essentially 100% perfect, like, you can really feel the emotion in some of those old sprites for the Pokemon games. You can tell that this is a labour of love, because seriously, that game was a labour of love. Actually getting that finished in the first place took half a decade, because that team did not have the money and the resources they needed to actually make the game, and it was reflected in the sprite art. And then so as they then went on from that, and as the Pokemon became this big mega hit, they had to actually sit down and I'm gonna have to get my screen back at some point. They had to come up with official canonical designs for a lot of these creatures that they had just created as sprites and not really given much extra thought to. And I like the direction that a lot of those went in, and I like that they in future had the opportunity to make more complicated designs in Gold and Silver. Like, a lot of these Pokemon, I like this little baby Tangler, for example, I feel were lost because they could do something. Oh, some more soldiers. Hello, team of soldiers. But these Pokemon, a lot of their designs were just so beautiful because they're so simple, I think, because they look a little bit wonky and a little bit derpy. Like, I like that. And I also like seeing how the sprite art has evolved over time, and if you look at the difference between the original Red and Green sprites and the ones that ended up in, say, Gold and Silver, where essentially they're working on a very similar size of sprite tile, but the ability that they'd gained by that point, the practice that they'd had in making sprites, meant that they could do such a better job of it. It's really impressive. But yeah, I love the simple ones. I love dumb art, which is probably why I am sat on this bench doing this in the first place. But yeah, I think that I'm not sure how much more. The light is leaving me. I don't know if you can tell because it's sunset and I'm not going to be able to do very much. But there's my baby Tangler, and I think that we might need to just about call this a day. Unfortunately, I've not had very much time. Blame the sun and its decision to drop. But yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you've had a really good time, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye bye.